Wanting to head back to simpler times when, moral standards were higher, allegedly, and everybody in New Zealand was a Christian, or at least had a deep biblical understanding of the church and respect for this fine institution. Not so much anymore. In fact, the majority of people in New Zealand, according to the latest research, would say that they, not only are they not Christian, they don't have a faith. That's what I think, but somebody who's done the research on this. In fact, he is a senior research fellow at Maxim Institute. Wonderful to welcome back to the program, Marcus Roberts. Marcus, kia ora, good morning.
Kia ora, Andrew. How are you?
I'm doing very well indeed. Say it isn't so. Most people in New Zealand have no faith at all, or certainly not Christian.
Yeah, so the latest census is quite old. It's 2018, and that showed that almost half of us said no religion. And so current trends suggest that the next census results, which should be out any day now, but certainly in the next couple of months, will suggest that over half of us will tick the no religion box.
Yeah.
And then those of us who are religious, which is still, a sizable minority, almost half, they're not just Christian anymore. Yep. It's a very fractured religious landscape in New Zealand. We have about 150 religions were ticked last census. So we're becoming less religious, but also more religious in that we've got more religions than we've had in our past.
And some of those will be different, various denominations of Christianity, but it probably also includes Jedi Knight in there, I suspect.
That's right. That's right. Flying Spaghetti Monster and all those sort of ones.
All of that good stuff. Now, you've written a paper for the Maxim Institute, which, here's a headline grabber. I clicked on this as soon as I saw it. Religious freedom in peril, says the headline. Just because less people believe in God, does this mean that our freedom to practice religion is under threat in New Zealand? Is that tangible and measurable?
So I don't think it's that. It's not a direct causation between the two, and it doesn't have to be that way. The paper is trying to make the argument that when you have people, particularly in policymakers or judges, those who have responsibility for upholding our legally provided religious freedom and the Bill of Rights Act, the Human Rights Act, when they don't practice religion themselves and are less likely to know anyone who does, then understandably their religious sensibilities are lessened. Yeah. And that makes it harder for them to understand the argument of believers who are saying that their religious freedom has been impinged by the government in some way. But it also makes it harder for them to make that balancing exercise when it comes to Bill of Rights cases, or even to really understand what the religion consists of. Yep. And that's not just because they're less religious or don't know anyone who's religious, but as I said, 150 different religions being adhered to by New Zealanders. Of course, we're not going to understand the tenets of every single religious faith that comes before them. So it's a plea to say, if that's the case, we need to start thinking more seriously about why we have religious freedom in the statute books as a human right, why it's important, and why those in public positions need to be more cognizant of the fact that maybe they don't know as much as they should about religion.
In some ways it makes sense. From an atheist point of view, people who believe in any particular god or religious system, probably for some atheists, that's in the same category as the flying spaghetti monster. Why should people have the right to believe something which, according to an atheist viewpoint, is demonstrably untrue? Why should we defend the right for people to believe in something which may not even be that good for them from another perspective? That there'll be many people that would say, hey, religion causes harm. Religion is bad for people. We shouldn't be defending this. We should be attacking it.
So quite simply because I think those people are wrong. The research that I put forward, a lot of sociological research into not only is religion good for us individuals who are believers, but it's also good for all people in society, whether they believe or not. And the reason for this is it's kind of analogous to the free speech argument. You have a marketplace of ideas, in this case, a marketplace of religious ideas. Mm-hmm. When it's free for people to put forward their religious case or their non-religious case, in the case of an atheist, you get to explore the most fundamental questions that all of us should deal with at some point in our life. Why are we here? Where did we come from? Where are we going after this life? And so to explore those questions, to do so in an environment which is free, allows us to be exposed to all those arguments, to hone our own beliefs, perhaps even to change our beliefs. And that's true whether or not we're atheist or not. Religious or atheist. And not only is it good for us as individuals, but it's good for society as a whole. So there is evidence to show that countries that are religiously free are more likely to be peaceful. They are more likely to be socially cohesive. They are more likely to have a citizenry which is able to ask those deep questions, which then informs their political decisions, which means they're more likely to have an open and free democracy. And there's evidence to suggest they're more likely to be economically successful. So there are good reasons to have a religious, a right to religious freedom, even if we're not religious ourselves. And that's what I was trying to put forward in the paper, why all of us should care about religious freedom and care when it's potentially not being upheld in the way it should be.
An example that appears in the report is a government response to COVID-19. And exactly. And I suppose this is something within recent memory where all of us recognise that the government was making choices for scientific reasons, for medical reasons, that perhaps neglecting not just the economic fallout of that, but the importance of religion, the importance of faith, the importance of community cohesion, whether it be through faith-based groups or others. And I suppose we're now seeing the consequence of that a few years on.
Yeah, I think that's right, Andrew. The examples which actually really triggered this paper were the officials' report to the Attorney General. So the background is that any piece of legislation which might impact human rights, the Attorney General must present a report to say why those infringements are justified in a free and democratic society. Yeah. And when it came to the lockdowns, for example, they went through what will be impacted: freedom of movement, freedom of association, obvious ones. Yeah. What wasn't considered by the officials was freedom of religion, which suggests that no one making this report had any idea that being locked in your house might have some impact on your ability to worship together into community, and why that might be important for religious people. And it's almost incredible to think that they missed this, because there's only 20 enumerated acts in the Bill of Rights Act. It's not a very long list to go down, but it's clear that the people making this report just had no clue as to a religious life, as to what the lockdown might mean for it. I'm not suggesting that the decision would have been any different, but it does suggest that there's a real gap in knowledge or consideration around religious beliefs and practice, and how government, like lockdowns, might impact upon that.
Now, nobody's saying that religious freedom is in peril to the extent of, say, North Korea or Saudi Arabia or anything like that. But I think that this is an important point. You describe religious freedom as the proverbial canary in the coal mine when it comes to rights and freedoms more generally. Why did you describe it like that, Marcus?
So the point, and this is another reason why atheists should be concerned about religious freedom slippages, is that it is tied together with our other civil liberties, such as the right to vote freely, because many of our political decisions come from our deepest held moral and religious frameworks, but also the right of association and the right to free speech. Once you start restricting what people can say in a religious sphere, it's very hard to keep that in a religious sphere and not to impact upon freedom of speech, freedom of association more broadly. The point, though, to come back to is that our laws are still good. On the statute books are still good. But laws on the statute books don't mean anything if those in power, and quite frankly, if all of us as a society don't really care about them. There's a quote I come back to a couple of times in the paper from our former Chief Justice, Shana Elias, where she said it's the extent to which the community values human rights is the extent to which they'll be upheld in our legal system. There's a great example that during the Cold War, the USSR had the most fantastic human rights legal document in the world. It protected everything, but of course we know that it meant nothing. So that's what I'm concerned about, that our legal rights on the books will start to be eroded because those enforcing them and ultimately society as a whole don't think they're valuable.
In terms of the response to this, I know for some faith communities, their response was to take to the streets, to block motorways, to set up camp outside Parliament to defend what they saw to be an erosion of their freedom of speech. But is this more, I suppose, speaking to the policymakers and saying, hey guys, can you count above 19? Make sure you make it to the bottom of the list next time.
It's about halfway down the list. They didn't even
Well,
have to get up to
exactly.
19. So it's doing two things. It is speaking to those policymakers, and the first two recommendations are for judges and policymakers to effectively do PD, professional development around religious knowledge.
Yeah.
But secondly, it is for all of us. If we who are religious do not value our freedom of religion and are not vocal in why it's important, then why should anyone else, policymakers or otherwise, protect it? They'll think, it's not that important, even those who are directly impacted, those who are religious, don't care about it. So it is speaking to all of us. It's trying to say, this right is valuable for these reasons, and we need to recognize and value it so that we have it not only today, but into the future as well, and that the erosions don't continue to where we get to a situation which is more erosion, more undermining, and effectively we might see one day where it's gone completely. So that's what I don't want to get to. So
certainly, and hey, for people that may think, oh gosh, this is scaremongering, we've got plenty of religious freedom in New Zealand. Not that long ago, I suppose, some of the people that were protesting mandates and lockdowns and those sorts of things, some of them motivated by faith reasons, were described by our politicians as having lost the right to protest because they were making this stand. So, I mean, that's
wrong protest.
Exactly. So perhaps this is something within our recent history.
We joke about coming back to COVID, but it was a huge impact upon our civil liberties, including our ability to come together and worship.
Yeah.
And for some of us, that's the most important thing in our life, or we'd like to think it is the most important thing in our life. So to lump it in the inessential category suggests that it was that those making those decisions didn't have that religious sensibility, which some of us might have. And so it is important. It is show how fragile these rights are and how they need to be kept to be defended.
Well, we appreciate the work that you do. It is a fascinating article. I recommend that people check that out, maxim.org.nz. Marcus, wonderful to chat with you once again.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.